Okay, so welcome everyone. Leil Tani Esther. Try to learn a little bit. Our learning is uh, first of all dedicated to Zecher Nishmat Chana Rivka Bat Henach Shem Shtav and Aliyah, and also I wrote. I'm going to hand out some source sheets in really a couple of minutes. Don't be daunted by them. It's 2 pages, double-sided. It is all in Hebrew, but I speak English and I'll translate. But I did ask people to hold the Tanakh so we could open up from the book of Esther, Megillat Esther, and to see some things. I'll say as I'm starting also that I'm dedicating this year also Nishmat Yedid Nafshi Harav Moshe Yisrael ben Harav Binyamin Zecher Tzadik Livracha, my friend Rabbi Moshe Hauer, who was a friend and a colleague. In some ways, I would even say a mentor. And we had a lot to do with each other over the years in Rabbanus and then organizational work and different things. And we have a lot of connections from Montreal and all of that. And he passed away right after Simchas Torah, and I'm still grieving. I think many people are still grieving that loss. So whenever I learn a Torah from the Pachad Yitzchak, when Moshe was alive, whenever we would talk very often about the particular Torah of Rav Yitzchak Putner Zatzal, and Rav Putner was one of the Rebbeim of Rav Lichtenstein. So whenever I'd meet with Rabbi Hauer, somehow, or not every single time, but many times, we would talk about something we learned together. Did you see this? Did you see that? Because there were voluminous writings about holidays, about different things. So we would talk about these issues. And welcome. We're suddenly running out of seats.
Maybe we should go.
Who knew? Halavai, it's going to be SRO. Halavai, there's still empty seats. No, it's going to be cavernous, and I'm losing it, and I can't take a seat. Look, there's beautiful chairs here. Yeah, welcome. Yeah, Seder. I don't know. Anyway, I haven't started yet. I was just I did the dedications. So whenever from now that my friend Rabbi Hauer was nifter, whenever not the chumash here, yeah, take this one because you'll have the same imagination. Take the same one. Jenny, you prefer to share with, or do you want to say it? So whenever I learned that now the Torah, the Pachad Yitzchak, I think about my friend Rabbi Hauer, Zichron Livracha, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. I miss him very much, and particularly at times like this, when things are happening in the world, I also think about him very, very much. So if you look on page 888 in the Megillah, which is in the Tanakh, in the full Tanakh, you find a verse that is striking among many psukim. It tells you about this wicked, nefarious foe named Haman. I'll save your booze for the laning itself. Look at verse 7, Pasuk Zayin. B'chodesh Harishon, u'chodesh Nisan, on page 888, the third chapter, Parag Gimel, Pasuk Zayin. B'chodesh Harishon, u'chodesh Nisan, Bishnat Shtem Esrei Lamelech Achashverosh, Hipil Pur Hu HaGoral Lifnei Haman, Miyom Liyom, Mechodesh L'chodesh Nemasar, U'chodesh Adar. So on this day, in the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of the king's reign, he drew lots. He peeled pur. Some of the commentators point out, and I'll actually pass around the sheets, why not? From now, again, do not be afraid by the fact that everything's in Hebrew. I'll translate everything, and we'll sing it inside, so you'll be anchored in the actual Tanakh. That the Ibn Ezra points out, this is a Persian word. But the holiday is called Purim. It's actually it's a Persian phonetic sound that appears very often. Pur appears very often in apparently in Persian. I didn't confirm it with our friends, members of Congregation or Torah, whose last name actually contains the word pur. Didn't you ever think of that? He peeled pur hu hagoral. The Megillah wants to explain what the pur is, and it wants you to know the Aramaic, the Persian meaning, and also the Hebrew meaning. A goral is a lottery, and a pur apparently is a lottery. But instead of just saying it's the lottery, the goral, it wants you to know the Persian word. And this is itself a question why it is that we have to have the Persian word and the Hebrew word. You don't have too many other things in here that it tells you, like they drank wine, and here's how you say wine in Persian. But Dafka, specifically this, there's some kind of a focus. If you look with me on page 1 of the sources here, right, at the end of the year, we'll come back to that question shortly. But first, the Gemara Masechet Megillah notes that when he drew lots, he peeled pur hu hagoral. The Gemara teaches Tana Kevin Shnafal Pur B'Chodesh Adar Samach Simcha Gidola. He was very happy when the lottery landed on the month of Adar. Why? Amar Nafali Pur B'Yerach Shemet Bo Moshe. It's the month that Moshe died, and therefore the Jews have no protector, and they're depressed, and they have no reason to be happy and no celebration, and therefore I'm happy. But the Gemara points out, what you thought was the end of Moshe turns out is also commemorating, or rather celebrating, his beginning. The end and the beginning. Notice that when he drew the lots, right here on page 888, what month is it when he draws the lots? It's Pesach time. It's Nisan. And when does it come out? At the end of the year. 11 months, really. The whole year has gone by. And the shiur right before this one is Masechet Rosh Hashanah. We spent a lot of time talking about the months and how they're constituted, and how they're connected, and how Kiddush HaChodesh works, and why it is that as far as the Jewish calendar is concerned, we move from Nisan as the first of the months. That's what the Torah says in Parshat Bo. And so the last of the months is this month called Chodesh Adar. By the by, the names themselves are Aramaic. The names of the months do not appear in the Torah itself. They're numerical. First month, second month, third month. This is the 12th month. And it tells you here also, this is Hu Chodesh Harishon, Hu Chodesh Nisan. All right. So in the later books of the Tanakh, there's an encroachment of these words, Nisan, and in this case, Adar, the first month, the last month, they now have names, etc. Okay?
Because in Parshat Bo, it says B'chodesh Harishon B'Arba Asar.
That's it.
That's it.
It does not ever say the name of it.
No.
Now there's beautiful drushes and things about that Nisan in Lashon Nes. It's beautiful, and it is true, the capital T. But is it when they had the name Nisan from Bavel, the Jews they heard Nisan? That's what it sounds like. We do this sometimes also in other ways. Won't go into right now, but let's say there's something there. There's something there. In the book of Esther and Megillat Esther and Perek Daled, we have on seems like the very same day, on page 890. I'm skipping around because you know the basic frame story. I have to remind you the basic story of this crowd. But when you go to Pasuk Tet Zayin, when Esther sends a message back to Mordechai, she tells him, Lech knosset kol Yehudim nimtzeim b'Shushan, v'tzumo olai v'al tochlu v'al tishtu shloshet yamim laila v'yom gam ani v'nar otay et sumkein u'v'chein avo l'melech asher lo chadat v'chasher avadati. It's verse 16 if you're reading in the English, right? Go find all the people you can. She had to do it that day, so you can't get to all the people in the 127th province, just the people in the capital district in Shushan. Mm-hmm. Tell them they're going to fast me for 3 days. And I will fast, my maidens will fast, and that's how I'll go in to see King Achashverosh. Well known. But of course, if you hold your finger there and you go back to this moment when he's with Haman, you'll find out on page 889, after he drew the lots, they call the scribes together and they have them write out the letters to go out to be dispatched. What date is the dispatch going out? Verse 12, Pasuk Yud Bet. Vayikaru Sofrei HaMelech b'chodesh harishon b'shlosha asar yom bo vayikatev k'chol shel tzivah Haman el Achash dar pnei HaMelech v'apachot asher al b'nina v'elsarei ha'am v'am medina b'nina kichava v'am v'mizkel shono b'shem HaMelech Achashverosh nichav v'nechtam b'tabat HaMelech. Probably the longest pasuk in all of Tanakh. I don't know, but it's very, very long. What's the date of this event happening? It's the 13th of Nisan. On the same day, 13th of Nisan, that's when she tells her special Mordechai, she tells him what? 3 days of fasting. 13, 14, 15. And we run into a little problem because 15 Nisan is Pesach. Cancel Pesach. And that's what she told him. The Gemara Masechet Megillah, Daf Tedvav, Amud Aleph, Vayavor Mordechai, Amarav Shehavir Yom Rishon Shel Pesach B'Tanit. They fasted the first day of Pesach. They fasted. They didn't eat. First day Pesach. That was a 3-day fast. We today have a 1-day fast, and we don't fast in the month of Nisan. We fast in the month of Adar. That's what we're going to do. It's tomorrow. That's Tanit Esther. We call it Tanit Esther, but the real Tanit Esther was actually in the month of Nisan. We moved it over, so it's right before Purim, right? So the next source is more of the story. She sent a message. Amrulo, I'm on page 1 here, on the sources in the bottom of the sheet, right? Third to last paragraph. She told him, go gather all the Jews who are in Shushan, let them fast for me. They won't eat and drink 3 days. Eluhain, Yud Gimel v'Yodal Tetvav b'Nisan. 3 days, 13, 14, and 15th of Nisan. Shalach Lai sent her a message. V'hai bahem Yom Rishon shel Pesach. Now, why? Did she didn't know it was Pesach? He says to her, you cancel what is going to be a Seder? She was thinking it's going to be a second Seder, so good enough, because Chutzlar, so, but that's true, but okay. Amrulo, she said to him, Zakin Shabi Yisrael, Lama Hu Pesach. All right, basically, what do we need Pesach for? If there are no Jews, what do we need Pesach? So, for this reason, in other words, when he heard this, he listened to her. Miyad Shama Mordechai, he admitted that she was right. Hadu Dichtiv Vayavor Mordechai. He passed. He passed means he went over. What does he went over? He went over Pesach. Vayaz Chosh Sivtal of Esther. Taman Amrin Shavir Yom Tov Shel Pesach Batani. They fasted that year on Pesach, which is incredible. So when this story happens, it's the first month. There's a sense of foreboding for what's going to happen in the 12th month of the month, 11 months in the 12th month. And actually, they missed the first day of Pesach. You with me? Some of this might be familiar to a lot of it. I did put in here, it's not parenthetical, it's germane, because the next section, that this is where the tefillah came up. And the tefillah is bound up with its tzom. And I've said many times over the years, I repeat now, for chizuk, we have many fast days. The fast day in the Torah of Yom Kippur is not a sad day, but all the other fast days are sad days because we're mourning the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, the Beit HaMikdash, and they're days of mourning and grief. And there is tefillah and there's tshuva, but fundamentally they're because bad things happen to the Jews, not Tanit Esther. Tanit Esther is the requited fast. We fasted, we davened, Hashem heard us, and it worked out. And therefore, this day is an incredible day for tefillah for Klal Yisrael. And our fasting and our davening should be, God willing, should have that impact. But we should recognize, so to speak, the impact that this day has had historically, and why we call Tanit Esther, and go with that in our tefillah. In that year, where everything hung in the balance, Hashem, he davened to God. This was the prayer of Mordechai. What did he say in his prayer? It's revealed and known before your heavenly, your throne of honor, the master of the worlds. Kilo migavhut leiv umarom ayin asiti asher leishtachaveti lahaman ki miratcha pa'alti zot levati shtachavot lo. I wasn't trying to be haughty when I refused to bow down to Haman. Right? You know, there was pushback on Mordechai. What do you have to make a problem? Right? The expression I used to hear in my house, mach nicht wissendig. Just, you have to make a big theory thing. I'm not bowing to you. I'm not bowing to you. So he's davening to Hashem, please, I didn't do it out of haughtiness, chas v'shem. I did it for you because I didn't want to bow down to a human like that, because I know he thinks of himself as a god. Ki areitimi panecha, l'ritei kvodcha, l'baser v'adav, l'ratziti shtachavot, l'zulatcha, ki mi ani, asher l'shtach v'lahaman, al tshuat amcha Yisrael, ki lochei chayiti min al raglav. I would lick his boots, actually, if it would save the Jewish people. I just didn't want to bow down to anyone except for you. But who am I not to bow down to Haman? I think I'm so important. I only did it for your honor, Hashem. And look what happened now. But I'm telling you, I would do anything to save the Jewish people. V'ata Elokeinu, hatzilenu na miyado. V'yipol b'shachar asher kara. May he fall into the pit that he dug. V'yilkod b'reshet asher taman. Let him get snared in the net that he set for us. L'raglei chasidech v'yidah margiz hazeh. This one who is one who creates anger in the world, right? Ki lo shachachta avtacha shivtachtanu. That you didn't forget your promise, God, that you gave to us as Jewish people, even if we're the worst, even if you throw us out of the land of Israel. V'av gamzot b'yotam be'eretz oivehem, when you're in your enemy territory. Lo ma'astim v'legaltim l'chaltim lefer briti tam kini Hashem Eloheim, from the Tocha and Sefer Vayikra. I'm not giving up to the Jewish people, and I'll keep my covenant. This is the prayer that he has. Ma'asa Mordechai ki beitzet atinokot v'yinautam milechem umayim v'bishan sak v'oshivam be'efer v'yitzokim v'bochim v'oskim b'torah. He took the kids, he told them, you're not going to eat today, and he took away their bread and their water. He made them wear sackcloth. He was a Rebbe. He taught them. And what did he do? They were crying out to Hashem. They were learning Torah. We're crying out to Hashem, we're learning Torah. That's what we're doing. So, at that same time, Esther Hamalka's davening. She's very afraid. Ubeiti hayta Esther nifcharet me'od mipnei harash yot samcha b'Yisrael. V'tifshot bigdei malchuta v'tifarta v'tilbosh sak v'tifras se'ar rosha. She messed up her hair. She took off her royal raiments. V'timaleoto afar v'efer. She filled it up. Everything was filled up with dirt and ashes. V'tana nafsha b'tzom v'tipola panel ifnei Hashem. Fell in front of Hashem. V'titpalel v'tomar Hashem Elokei Yisrael Hashem Mashalta miyamei kedem ubarat et olam. You are the one who lived for you ruled from the beginning. You created the whole world. Help your maid servant. Asher nisharti yatoma bli av v'aim. I have no one left, not a father, not a mother. I am completely alone in this world. I'm like a poor woman going door to door. I'm going window to window in Achashverosh's palace, and I'm looking out the window, meaning heavenward, and I'm davening to you. Presumably at the window, people would see her. Otherwise, she's looking outside and she's davening. That's what it says. That's the description. Save your sheep of your flock from these enemies that have arisen against us. There's nothing stopping you, God, from saving us with a lot, with a little. You are the father of the orphans. Stand before to the right side, meaning to the help this orphan, who has trusted in your kindness. You bring the haughty down, God. So you give me mercy in front of this person. I'm afraid of him, and bring him low. You're the one who brings the haughty ones down, and you can do that to help me. All of this by way of introduction. Now we go into a deeper layer. All of this was just so to understand some of the dynamic and to sharpen for us, if nothing else, that this is the Tani Desta that we're up to. Look at the tefillah that they have, each one in their own way. It's a great time for prayer now of tefillah. And I thought it was important to mention that in the Shiur as part of it. It's not from Rav Hutner, but this is just to set it up. Now to the Rav Hutner piece, more in depth. When we think about Jewish history, the Jewish people have confronted a certain paradigm within Jewish history of four kingdoms. We've confronted four kingdoms. Chazal described this in various places, and they've read into various stories that the number four represents these four kingdoms. I'm going to give you a few examples. So you have Reish Lakish, understood the very beginning of the Torah when it says, and the world was chaotic, the arts of tov avo, and it was dark, and the darkness in the face of the deep, that each of those words is a stand-in for one of these four nations, the four nations where we were exiled. So the arts of tov avo, that's Bavel. What is that's Tov. What's Bo? That's Madai and Paras. They're together, Media and Persia. Darkness, that's Yavan, Greece. They darken the eyes of the Jewish people through their decrees. It would tell the Jews right on the horn of an ox that you have no share with the God of Israel. That's for another time to explain what that cryptic line means. On the face of the deep, what's the deepest one? The dark of darkness, the worst one of all. That's the galut of the wicked empire that has no way to even understand it. It just keeps going and going like the deep, right? And the deep you cannot really investigate. So these wicked people, they just keep going, keep going, keep going. We call that Galut Edom or Galut Romi. The Roman Empire destroys the second Beit HaMikdash in 70 of the Common Era, but the Roman Empire keeps going for hundreds of years afterward, and Jews live under the thumb of Rome, and they're always asking themselves, we survived the Roman exile, but what's happening here? We have no prophets. We have no idea when this is going to end. And instead of the Romans being punished for what they did to us, they seem to be doing pretty well for centuries. Until finally Constantine, etc. It's hundreds of years later. So Chazal understood this. There's four nations. Like Yaakov has his dream. He dreams, Vayachalom, V'nei Sulam Utzav Artzav, Rosh Magiah Shema. We're familiar with these psukim, the ladder, and the angels are going up and down. The Ramban writes, quoting from the Pirkei Rebbe Eliezer, that which is an early work from one of the sages of the Mishnah, that this is exactly like the Brit Ben B'Turim of Avram Avinu, is what's happening now to Yaakov. Avram had a vision. I'm moving backwards on purpose. Avram had a vision, and now Yaakov has the vision. What's the vision? The angels going up and down are not just angels. They're the angels each of these nations. And he sees each of them go up and come back down. They go up in their prominence, and they descend again. But the last one, Rome, goes up And it doesn't seem to come down. And Yaakov is worried. What's going to happen? What's Hashem tell him? I am above you. I will be with you. You will have progeny, and the land you're sleeping on right now, I'll give to you and to the future, to your progeny that comes after you. And the Ramban writes about this, and he describes that the truth is, it's also found in the Tanakh, in the book of Daniel. Daniel has various visions, also involving these four phases, four nations, and we think about what those nations might mean, and as far as an archetype, four nations. Okay. The Ramban makes reference to the idea that the truth is this vision is Yaakov's version. He sees a ladder, but his grandfather, instead of a ladder, saw different kinds of animals in this covenant between the parts, the Brit Ben Abitarim, which for want of time, I think we're not going to open up, but it's in Bereshit in chapter 15. There's different animals. Each animal is meant to represent another part of the exile, or according to one interpretation, the one I gave you here, the different emotional states that Avram falls into. He has trepidation. He has fear. A great darkness falls upon him. Those are the four representations of four different exiles. In fact, we probably should open it up because I actually want you to see something in it. So let's go Bereshit chapter 15. I originally was going to skip it, but it's too important to skip. Look at chapter 15 in Sefer Bereshit. You can find the Koren Tanakh on page, wait for it, almost there, page 14 on the bottom. Page 14 of the Koren Tanakh. This is the covenant between the parts. God makes a covenant with Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu is very afraid. He's just prosecuted a war to save Lot. It's the war, the First World War, the four kings against the five kings. In comes Avram, says this to Hashem, I'm afraid. God tells him, I'm going to show you something. He shows him the stars. This is how your children will be, etc. And then comes verse 7. God, he says to Hashem, after God tells him, I am God who took you out of Ur of the Chaldees, Ur Kasdim, where he lived in present-day Iraq. I brought you to give you this land as an inheritance. And Avram says, Hashem Elokim, Bama idaki Rashena, how will I know that I will inherit it? And Hashem tells him, take these animals, Chali Egla Mishulash, V'emer Lav Chali Egla Mishulash, V'ez Mishulash, V'ay Mishulash, V'tor V'gozal, V'yikachlu et kol eila, V'yivater otam b'tavech. He takes them all, he has to split them, he has to put them one against the other. It's a mystical scene. You could read it in the English on page 15, also verse 10. Some kind of a predatory bird comes flying down. Alapgarim, Vayashev Otam Avram, he pushes them away. Vayhi Hashem Shlavo, Terdimana Flal Avram, Vihine, Ema, Chashecha, Gedola, Nofelet Alav. Four different things that fall upon him. This kind of fear, a darkness that is great, that falls on him. And God says to Avram, Yadoa Teda, you should be aware, Kigeria Zaracha be'eretz lo lahem. Your children will be strangers in a land that is not theirs. Vavadum v'inuotam arba'meot shana, they'll be oppressed there as strangers for 400 years. Then they will emerge. They will leave with a lot of wealth. You will not live to see it, but what will happen? The fourth generation will come back, and they will come back to the land of Israel. Everyone with me? I just finished telling you repeatedly that there are four kingdoms. Bavel, Parasu Madai, the Persian Median Empire, actually the same. They're kind of in cahoots, and eventually the Persians just swallow the Medians. There's not really a war or anything. Then comes the war of the Persians against the Greeks, and the Greeks win, and the Romans overtake the Greeks. There's a stepwise fashion. But I left one out, obviously. Mitzrayim. And I mentioned Egypt. But if you look at this story, you notice that Egypt is the only one that's mentioned explicitly. It's the one that sets the stage for everything that's going to come afterward. There's one where there's going to be the sort of the headquarters first run of things that's going to set the stage, and then there'll be four more. And the first one actually ends in a very positive way, in a very decisive way. The other four, not as decisive. Really not as decisive at all. Rav Hutner points out that you have here the paradigm of four kingdoms and one that came before it, and that was the kingdom of Mitzrayim. In all of these cases, there was a king, there was a government, And their intention was to enslave the Jewish people in some way. As slaves, actually, as captives, as exiles, as vassal citizens, whatever you want to call it. But that was the kingdom. And contrast that with the other groups that the Jewish people have to contend with, the 7 nations. There are 7 nations in the land of Israel. They're called the Zayin Amamim. I gave you the verses here from the book of Dvarim. We don't have time to look it up. We don't have to. When God brings, Hashem your God brings you to the land that you're going in to inherit, he will cast off in Ashal Goyim Rabim Panecha many nations. And it's 7 nations. Shiva Goyim Rabim V'atzumi Mimeka. 7 nations will God have that are very strong, stronger than you. But Hashem will help you and you'll overtake those nations. Where do those nations live? 7 nations live in Eretz Yisrael. Are you still with me? Just follow how it's going to go. We're going to go into something much deeper. 4 kingdoms, a paradigm of Jewish history. That's the kingdom that puts its thumb on the Jewish people's ability to say Hashem is our king. Because that king says, I'm your king and you're slaves to me. The nations, 7 nations, live in the land of Israel. And in the land of Israel, their goal is to prevent the Jewish people from getting to the land of Israel, from conquering the land of Israel, from being the Jewish people in the land of Israel. I told you before there are 4 kingdoms, and there's one that precedes it. And that kingdom is, of course, the kingdom of Mitzrayim. Is there also a nation that precedes the 7 nations that has the same function as the 7 nations, but precedes the 7 nations? It's not one of the 7 nations. It's Amalek. The Jewish people leave Egypt on the way from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael, stopping off at Har Sinai. And what happens? Along comes Amalek. And just as, and I have it here at the bottom of page 2, Shem says to Paro, so says God, my firstborn child is Yisrael. And you need to send out my son, Israel, otherwise I'll kill your firstborn. Just as the prophet Yirmiyahu says, that the idea is that the first of the crop, the cream of the crop, the top of the crop is the Jewish people, because Kodesh Yisrael Hashem Reshut Tvuato. So too on the flip side is Egypt. Egypt stands against the Jewish people in that way. And what is Amalek? It's page 3. I forgot. I should have said these 2 sources also. Page 3 at the top, right? The Jewish people are my servants. They serve me, says God. I took them out of Egypt, right? That's the freedom from being under the thumb of Malchut. Kibalta Malchuti kablu gzerotai. You accepted my kingdom, my dominion. Now accept my decrees at Har Sinai. Meaning, we're not slaves to some other group, but we have as a paradigm our encounter with Mitzrayim, because there was a Yetziat Mitzrayim. We did decisively beat them. And it somehow becomes almost like the what's the word? It's standing outside of the Daled Malchiot, the pattern of the 4 nations that will come for exiles. But it reminds each of the exiles, there was a time we got out of this. And there was some pattern that was set up that we are able to overcome this. And now we have the 3rd source here, Vayar et Amalek. Vayisam Shelo Bilam sees Amalek, and he says, Vayomar, Reshit Goyim Amalek. The first among nations is Amalek. V'acharito Adei Oved. In the end, they'll be destroyed. In the beginning, the first nation is Amalek. And in fact, the first nation the Jewish people encounter that is referred to not as a Malchut, but as an Am, is Amalek. And the idea that the Jewish people have to encounter Amalek is the idea the Jewish people have to encounter both the Daled Malchiot, that's the holiday of Pesach, and after Pesach, in the Torah, Parshat B'Shalach, crossed through the Red Sea, not too long after, what do we encounter? Amalek comes to attack us. Their goal is to prevent us from getting to Har Sinai, to get the instructions of what it means to be a Jew, and by extension, to actually get to Eretz Yisrael. Before Avram got that promise from Hashem that he'll get the land and he'll have children, but by the way, the covenant, first you're going to go down to Mitzrayim, and the allusion to these other 4 nations, we have the war of the 4 kings and the 5 kings. And in that war, you have the names of these kings. Vayihibime Amrafel Melech Shinar Aryoch Melech Elasar Kedar Melech Elam Tid Al Melech Goyim. Different 4 kings. What does the Ramban say? Do you know why there were 4 kings fighting against Avram Avinu? You can already guess. They're a paradigm for things to come. Hamas says that Yirala Avram, Lorot ki arba malchiot tamod na limshol ba'olam, uvesof yidgabru banav aleim v'yiplu kulam biyadam, v'yashivu kol shvutam v'rechusham. This thing that happened to Avraham, where Avram Avinu fights a war, he literally goes to war and battles these 4 kings who have come from Mesopotamia. He has come in order to fight them, and why did he fight the war? To rescue his family member who was taken captive. So too, the Jewish people, the children of Avram Avinu, will overcome these various 4 nations and their exiles, and they will return all their captives and all of their property. Vayarishim mehem Bavel. The first one is Bavel. That's why his name is Amraphel Melch Shinar. Shinar is the valley where the Tower of Babel is made. Bavel, that's why it's there. In the book of Daniel, Antu Reisha Didahava. Okay, the head of the statue is made out of gold. Maybe Elasar refers to a city in Media or Persia. Ve'ilam, Be'ir Hahi, Hamelach Melech Yavan. That's where the king of Greece lived. When the Greeks overtook the Persians, that's where they lived. We're in Elam. Fine. Now the next line, this is what we need. Umelech Goyim, the Melech known as Goyim, that was his name, was the king Tidal Melech Goyim. He's the king over a place called Goyim, or maybe a king over nations. Hamelech al Amim Shonim Asher Samu Alehem Lerosh Ulekatzin. The last of the 4 kings, remember we're going in order: Babylon, Persia, Media, Greece, Rome. The last one is Rome, and the last one is called here Tidal Melech Goyim. Why Goyim nations? Because many nations. It's a Ramez Lamelech Romi Asher Malech al Ir Mikubetzet Me'amim Rabim. They ruled over a city that had many nations within it. Kitim ve'Edom v'Yater Goyim. And all different other nations that came out of them. Now, Rome, to the extent that we, as Jews, identify it as this Tidal Melech Goyim, and Edom is one of those nations. Who is Edom? Edom's other name is Esav, and Esav's grandson is Amalek. So Amalek is the first nation before we get to Har Sinai, but it turns out, at least the last book of the Tanakh, in which we have a record of any encounter with a major empire, it's right here. We're also encountering Amalek in the persona of Haman. Now you'll tell me, but he's around in the time of Persia. Persia, Greece, Rome. Yes, but the point is, that Rav Hutner says the seeds are already planted in the time of Persia, because the role of Rome is very much to hold their thumb, apparently Jewish people, for a very long time. As it opened with 4 nations, it will close with 4 nations. And therefore, Amraphel, that's Bavel, Aryoch is Madai, Kedela Omer is Yavan, Tidam Melech Goyim, Zumalchut Edom, Shemechatevet Tironia Bechol Mikol Umad Olam. Because Rome has this particular role where it essentially generates imperialism more than the other nations. It will continue to go and to spawn other kinds of things. Edom, Romi, back and forth. Edom, Romi, it's the same thing. Rome is Edom, Edom, Rome. But also the idea that somewhere in the back of all of this, we have something related to the world of Amalek that also has come up in this. So now, in Breshit Rabbah, it describes that the same thing again. Breshit Rabbah, same medrash. I gave you the bolded part. Amar Rabbi Elazar bar Avina. Imra'ita malchiot midgarot elu be'elu tzafei l'ragol shel Mashiach. If you see that the different kingdoms are fighting one with the other, you should be expectant that you're going to hear the footsteps of Mashiach. Teida shekain shehare b'mei Avraham. The nations fought each other, and look at the redemption that came to Avraham. Remember what happens? The 4 kings attack the 5 kings, and living in the territory of the 5 kings is Lot. So even though Lot's a citizen there, he gets taken captive and sent to exile. Avram gets this force together, ends up saving Lot and destroying the 4 kings. Avram had a geula, so says this Amora, Rabbi Elazar bar Avina, you should take it as a paradigm. If the nations are already fighting with each other, Listen for the sound of the footsteps of Mashiach Tzidkenu. Rav Hutner explains that there was an intertwining going on the holiday of Purim between these two systems. We have a king, and the king is the king of Persia, and that's one of the four in the list of kingdoms. At the exact same time, who do we have? A person who is at once a member of that nation that is the first among nations before we got to Israel. And what's his job over here as well? He wants to kill the Jews. It's not just that. We talked a little bit about some Shabbos. Footnote does not say this part, but I mentioned from the book of Ezra, there's a party of people called the Tsarei Yehuda. They want to destroy the Jewish people's ability to start up anything in Eretz Yisrael. Haman is called the Tzorer HaYehudim. He's a member of the party. And he happens to be a minister in the Persian government. The one holiday that we have that is both the confrontation with the world of the Daled Malchiot, the four kingdoms, and with the Zayin Amamim, the seven nations, or rather the one that comes before the seven nations, and actually, if you think about it, also endures and is still around after the seven nations, is Amalek. The two systems are enmeshed on this holiday. Says Rav Hutner, if you look in the Gemara asks Esther min Torah min ayin. It's a very strange Gemara, page 3, Gemara Masechet Chulin, and the Gemara says Va'anochi haster astir. What's that? It's a pasuk in Sefer Dvarim. And God says, if the Jewish people misbehave, I will hide myself on that day. It's a very scary piece of the Torah. It's the end of the Torah, but it doesn't say that. It says double language. I will hide myself twice. I'll hide and I'll hide. Why is it haster astir? I'll hide and I'll be hidden. What are you saying twice? The Maharal, in his Akdama to the second Akdama, really, to the Or Chadash, his commentary on the book of Esther, points out the following. Esther is hinted at in the Torah apparently with a double language, haster astir. Says the Maharal of Prague. Why is that? Why is it written that way? Ki hester rishon shayu tachat malchut achashverosh shayu meshuabadim lo. They were under the kingdom of Achashverosh. They were subservient to him. V'yoter mizeh, but more than that, tachat Haman. They were also under Haman. Both. Lekach amar shektiv v'istarti panai mehem chazal lichtov ki odevo Yisrael shnei hastarot. It's a double hiding. V'zeh vanochi haster astir lirmoz, to hint al shnei hastarim she'amarnu. There are two different pieces here. One is the system of the kings, and the other is the system of the nations. And they're both enmeshed in the same time in the holiday of Purim. It's a double confrontation. There is a confrontation with Achashverosh as well. It's much more subtle, right? He seems to be much more pliable, etc. But you have to work within that system. As the Gemara in Megillah says in Daf Yudalid, Akati Avid Achashverosh Anan. At the end of the holiday, the reason we don't say Hallel, one of the reasons, because we're still slaves to Achashverosh at the end. We didn't go home and build the Jewish state. It didn't happen. There was no Beit HaMikdash built after that. That's it. That's what Chazal explained. So the point is, we have that system. What's the other system? We have the system involving our confrontation with Haman. So turn to the last page with me. And Rav Hutner explains the following. I gave you the language of Rav Hutner, which is a very high style language. We'll try to read it a little bit slowly and see what we can glean from it. Okay, right. And again, with everything that I explained until now about Haman really being at once preceding the seven nations, but also standing outside of the system, so that he's sort of waiting to be after all the seven nations. Seven nations are wiped out, but who's still around? A vestige from that original nation the Jewish people confronted, and that's Amalek. And he's descended of Edom, and you have that Galut Edom, the kingdom, and the persona of Amalek, a descendant of Edom, who's still trailing us in Jewish history. The Pachad Yitzchak writes, Vikan, having explained all of this, to amim anu et hadvash verachalav haganuz tachar halashon haparsi shel tevat pur. Now we can taste, finally, the honey and the milk that is hidden under the tongue of Persia in the word pur. Hipil pur hu hagoral lifnei Haman. It's the drawing of lots, which is the lots in front of Haman. Translated, Kilomar, ha'oketz shel ha'ma'ora hu bezeh, shehaman ha'amaleki asakan goral parsi. Haman, who is an Amaleki, dipped into the world of the kings. Even though he's a nation, he dips into the world of Persia. Kikan hu hatchala shel Amalek b'torat sholeach tironia. This is the beginning of Amalek beginning to be involved in a certain element of casting some kind of tyranny on the world. Tid al melech goyim. This is very, you'll understand the language. Slav shel amamiu malchiot. It's a cross formed by the nations and by the kingdoms. It's a hastara betoch hastara. It's something hidden within something hidden. Umikan shetokva shlanes he gilui al gabe gilui, and therefore the miracle is a revelation on top of a revelation, because it's not just confronting Haman, who represents Amalek, but Haman, who is now sort of crossed over into the world of Paras and wants to control also the Malchut. And the point is to get to him is to get past his labyrinthine way that he's both a nation and he's trying to overtake the Malchut of Paras, the power of the Malchut that an Am would not have. The kingdom has power much more than the nation. The whole Torah speaks only about the idea of joy or of a feast. Over and over again. You may mishta v'simcha, you may mishta v'simcha. It's mishta and it's simcha. Why twice? Why the doubling? Because the joy itself, it's pushing you to reveal something. The wine certainly brings out that secret. We're engaged both in the joy of the feast and the joy of joy itself. Why is it double? Because we're celebrating both the fact that we were saved from the Hester of the Malchut and the Hester of the Am. And therefore, this holiday is known as the last of all of the holidays. And mark this very well. It always comes every year right before Pesach. That year it didn't happen. But what does it mean it comes right before Pesach? What you think is the end is really going back to the beginning. When Haman saw it was the end of the year, he didn't realize it's also the beginning of something. When he thought he had finally bested the Jewish people because he's Reshit Goyim Amalek, he comes before the 7 nations who are in Israel, that he's going to stop the Jews from getting back to Israel by getting them rid of them completely. He was genocidal. So he'll get rid of the Jews. They can't go back and build their land and build their temple. What happens in the end? Gilui al pnei gilui, al gabe gilui, the revelation on top of a revelation. It's the Mishnah and the Simcha. And so the joy of this holiday, the end of Haman, and you go back to that pasuk, Reshit Goyim Amalek, he's the first, Va'acharito Adei Oved. In the end of time, he will be destroyed, but not before the end of time. We'll have to keep contending again and again in every generation with the Zecher Amalek, and we have to keep going back again and again to try to go up against our enemies in that way. At the end of the Sefer that we're up to, this Megillah, we have the idea that Jewish people don't get they don't get out of the decree. They just get the ability to fight back and defend themselves. And that was the victory, was being able to defend themselves. And they do prosecute a war. They do have to stand up and fight against Amalek writ large, right? Meaning not the genetic Amalek, but anybody who, how did they know who they were supposed to go after? Because the original missive, original email said, on the 13th day of Adar, if you want to kill the Jews, license to kill the Jews. The second missive, 23 Sivan, in the year before, it says, on that day, the Jews may also defend themselves. Whoever came out to the street for a fight was going to get it. That's what happened. So if you look over here, Nikalu HaYehudim Ba'areim, V'ishlamad b'fnehem kinafal pachdam al kol hamim. V'samit gabrim, the Jewish people go out, they gather together in their cities. No one stood against them. Their fear had fallen upon all of the nations, the Amim, right? V'yisrael mitgabrim ka'aryeh shenafal be'edrei tzon. They fell on them strong, like a lion would fall on a flock of sheep. That's how the Jews were, like lions. Umakev holech ve'im matzil biyado. They would strike against their enemies. No one could stop them. Haru dichtiv. Vayash sherit Yaakov bagoyim bikrav amim rabim ka'aryeh bebamot yar ukikfir be'edrei tzon. Like a lion against the forest animals, and like also another kind of a lion, the kfir, the young lion, against the flock of sheep. V'hargu banav shel Haman u'tla'um. And they killed the sons of Haman and hung them up. Yeah. By the way, sons of Haman, doesn't just mean they were biologically his sons. It means ideologically they were his sons. They were the people who were the commanders. It's not a meritocracy over there. They give it to the children. So his kids were all the commanders of the whatever you want to say, of the Haman RGC over there. That was him. So they strung them up. Then the Medrash says, Adarianus Caesar, Hadrian, the Caesar, Amal Rabbi Yeshua, many generations later in the Roman time. Gedola hi hakivsa shomeret ben shivim ze'evim. Great is the lamb that can withstand living among 70 wolves. In the time of Hadrian, the Jewish people's stock, of course, in terms of strength, is very low. And even Hadrian, who was a terrible person, terrible persecutor of Jews, Sheikh Tamim, his bones be ground up, the Chachamim say all the time, Yimach Shemo, he admitted to Rabbi Yeshua, great is the lamb that can live among 70 wolves. And that's the Jewish people, the miracle of the survival of the Jewish people. Rabbi Yeshua said something back to him. Amar Loi replied, Gadol hu haroeh shematzila v'shover lifneihem. Greater than that miracle is going to be the miracle of the shepherd who will save that flock and will break apart those wolves in front of those sheep. Anything anything that anyone will try to bring forward against you as a vessel will not be successful. It will fail. And Rabbi Yeshua had the wherewithal to say that at a time that was incredibly hard for the Jewish people. Hadrian killed the Sasar Huge Malchut. You read on Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, the Hadrianic persecutions, 135 to 138, a reaction to the Bar Kokhba revolt. And not from then until the arrival of Tzionut, was there any attempt to create a Jewish state. And to think about the moment that we're up to. I know the Prime Minister, if you heard his speech, I don't know if he gave it in English, but in Hebrew, he gave this speech where he said, very important day in Jewish history, Yud Aleph Adar. It's the day of the death of Joseph Trumpeldor. Joseph Trumpeldor died, and 7 of his people, they died at Tel Chai, 106 years ago. Today, he says, Yud Aleph Adar. And there's a statue in the place where he died. They put a statue there. What's a statue? It's a roaring lion. So he said, we call this the Sha'agat Ari. This is called the roaring lion is the name of the mission. I thought, oh my goodness, that's what he thinks? It's beautiful. But Megillah Nikreit, the Megillah is being read out loud. You get the Midrashim right over here. I don't think he's reading the Midrashim, but here we are, yeah? And he writes that we should have this ability to see things in perspective. Haman only sees to the end of the year. He doesn't see how it goes back to the beginning. Na'ut sofo b'tchilato. The end is connected again to the beginning. The end of the year connected to the beginning of the year. The idea that we always have Purim when there's 2 Adars, and the second one, what does Chazal say? To be samach geula to geula, redemption and redemption. One is the small redemption, that is the redemption from the enemy, the redemption from persecution, so we could keep going. We could have a better chance next time to keep going and be something better. But that leads to the great geula, the geula of Yetziat Mitzrayim, which hopefully will be a harbinger for the geula Hashlem v'amiti b'meher b'yameinu. Amen v'amen. Wish everyone a Purim Sameach, a Chizku v'imtzu, and great things. Thank you for joining tonight, and a Purim Sameach to all. Ad Kan.